Nick, let me tell you about the first time I watched the movie we're talking about today.
Okay. All right.
And I was at a party. This is a terrible movie to put on at a party. There's too much stuff going on in the narrative.
So it's like you're in college?
No, this is like a high school, maybe middle school party.
Okay, so early 2000s,
and
like
people
10 years after it came out.
Oh, yeah. People kind of gathered around the TV to watch. The party was kind of dying, and people were kind of hanging out and leaving. But, like, I remember watching this for, like, a half hour, and, like, half the people there were disturbed, and half the people there had seen it before. And I'm in the middle, haven't seen it, not disturbed. I was bored out of my mind.
Bored?
Yeah, and so I left about a half hour in. I was like, no, I'm not interested. Like, and it wasn't so much I thought the movie was bad, but I couldn't follow it because there were so many people talking.
It's not a party atmosphere movie.
Yeah, it's a terrible movie for a party. You throw on a Star Wars.
Throw Dead Snow in there, man.
There you go.
Throw Evil Dead, yeah.
But it took years, actually, until I was with my, then girlfriend, now wife, and she made me watch movies like Fight Club for the first time, American History X. Both movies I thought looked boring as hell.
It's really weird that you watched those before.
And then she pushed me into Seven. Oh. And so somewhere in that trifecta, I finished the film that we're talking about today. And in finishing it, I was like, how was I ever so wrong?
Well, that's high school.
Yeah. We're allowed to be wrong, I guess.
Be wrong. Before we begin the show, I saw this when I was a junior high school. We all, as a group of 10 or 15 of us in our group, went to see this movie. And you know the scene. Everybody knows the scene where he's still alive. Two of my friends that were girls, they're not my girlfriends, but they're friends that were girls, quietly walked up, left the theater, and waited for us to finish in the lounge. And we had to explain the whole movie to them afterwards in the car ride. I do remember that. So I won't tell them their names, I won't throw them in the bus, but that's the experience of Seven.
Well, if they'd stayed any longer, there was another scene that I think would have made them walk out. There's one there's another one that bothers me probably more so. Welcome to Kyle and Nick on Film, and today we're talking about the incredibly graphic, but not incredibly violent, Seven. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks for watching, thanks for finding us, and for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can find the show, follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Hey, we do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great options to tell us what to do. And today we're going to talk about what I think is the catalyst for dark, very gritty, slimy noir movies like Mimic and Event Horizon, Stir of Echoes, like 8mm. I think it's the start of it. Of course, it happens right in the mid of the 90s. Seven.
Yeah. So two homicide detectives, one a rookie and the other a veteran on his way to retirement.
Yeah.
Track
Almost like
a killer.
Weapon.
Exactly.
Almost like Lethal Weapon.
They track a killer whose victims are based on the 7 deadly sins. As the detectives struggle to uncover the killer, they find that they are always one step behind, and they may just be heading right into his trap.
Okay, so when this movie came out, the hit song Guilty by Gravity Kills was already on the radio for a couple months. And I remember having a fight with one of my friends thinking it was 9 Inch Nails. And I was like, no, this is not 9 Inch. It's totally 9 Inch Nails. It does sound kind of like 9 Inch Nails, but it was a big hit before the movie. And then that gets interjected into the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, hey, that's the song. And it's one of those things that popped in my ears. I'm like, yeah, I remember that was a big hit. You couldn't get away from it. Seven. What the hell year is it in this movie?
We don't need to know. That's fine.
Is
There's
it
no
the
cell
40s?
phone, so we don't have to worry too much. But
the 40s? Is it the 60s? It's one of those things I like about this movie. There's really like, what's the date?
That's kind of true of a lot of Fincher stuff, though, too. Like, The Game feels like it could be of a time, but we're like, and it's a maybe more relative time. Unless it's like a true story like Zodiac, like Mank, like unless it's something like that. True, yeah. Like Panic Room could be a movie of a few different decades.
You put in Alien 3, what the hell year is it?
Well, that I tracked. No, I agree with you. It's kind of like a weird time, but that's almost like that's a Fincherian style. It's kind of his world. We're just stuck in it. We're not living in it. We're stuck in it.
They're still using typewriters.
Yep.
Morgan Freeman's acting like very 40s noir. Brad Pitt's very 60s neo-noir with the leather coats and the haircuts and everything. So it's almost like a blending of those two, the 40s and the 60s noirs. And
in a 90s style.
In the 90s with the fast cut editing before, the compilations. Because David Fincher was a very sought-after music video director.
Yes.
A lot of them performers and artists and musicians sought him to direct their videos. And that's how he started his career before movies. But yeah, what the heck year is it? This movie kind of is the catalyst for dark movies, and I have to give credit for screenwriter Andrew Kevin Walker.
Oh yeah, Walker, and he's someone who's done some pretty solid work since. And of course, Sleepy Hollow he worked on, the Wolfman remake from 2010. He'd worked on, so he'd
8
done some
millimeter
big
feels
items
like
that-
somebody
Oh yeah,
comes from the same neighborhood of 7.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, he crafted a really, and I think that's maybe the film's strongest aspect is it's a really tight script,
Yes.
and it's a script that convinces you that this killer we're searching for is that smart. Because when you really want to break it down, like it seems a little ludicrous that this killer is that good. That
almost
he's
like the
that
Riddler.
smart. Yeah, it feels very
He wants
comic
to be
booky,
caught, yeah, but-
where it's like, come on now, how is this guy that good? But the script from Andrew Kevin Walker, combined with David Fincher's ability to kind of redirect our narrative away every time it seems like we're getting towards a point of ludicrous, he redirects the narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that's what saves this movie and ends up making it, I would dare say, perfect, almost perfect.
Dancing on it, yeah.
It's fantastic, and I think that every time I watch it, I find myself engaged, and maybe it's because there's 7 deadly sins. I get the order confused a lot.
We
when
know
I'm
where
thinking
to go.
about it.
Yeah.
And I get really confused about which murder takes place with which sin. I get really confused about that because it's just something that I don't connect with why he's torturing the characters because I'm not insane.
I did give it. I wrote it on my notes. I think it's a word that we use now that we didn't use in the 90s.
Incel, yeah.
I think he's an incel.
I wouldn't shock me.
There's a lot of sexual components to the crimes, even though there's a lot of other sins of gluttony and sloth and everything. But there is kind of this underlying sexual thing to it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also a level. This was like pre-Scream, but spoiler. We're gonna get into spoilers. I should warn. When our killer reveals like that he's like people will talk about this forever. This is pre-Scream, and he's talking about the fame that he will attain, the legendary status. It feels like something out of a Hannibal Lecter novel, where like the killer is like looking to be like Red Dragon, like the ascension of the killer into something.
A little bit like
mythical.
Red Dragon, I agree.
Yeah.
It's like Silence of the Lambs. Not really like Silence of the Lambs. More,
It feels
more
like Manhunter and Red Dragon, just because of what the killer's going through. He wants to become something.
Notoriety,
you know?
yeah, going to be talked about forever. Yes.
And what I really like too is I got to point this out. I want to point out. I hate the MPAA, but I sometimes love how they dance around giving a rating. This thing is rated R for grisly after views of horrific and bizarre killings and for strong language. There's very little actual violence taking place in the film, like that we see.
Your brain
we see
tells
the
you.
aftermath, and that's why even people mention that at the end of the film that we see something that we actually don't see in the closing moments of the movie. It's just edited to make you feel that you're seeing something.
I don't think are the dead bodies real people or are they?
So I know screenwriter Andrew Kevin Walker played the first dead body, I believe.
Oh, the big
I
guy?
believe he's playing the
Is
first
that a
guy.
suit on him?
I don't know. The makeup effects are incredible for the
Okay.
movie. I'm not 100% sure how if there's an actor.
I don't care either way. It's just fascinating, something little thing.
But I know that he portrayed the first one, I believe. And then of course, like there's got to be somebody under all that emaciation.
But the sloth guy on the bed, he almost looked at the mechanicals of the film Life Force.
Yeah.
When he gets sucked out of the.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't really know how those
If
things
you know
are
Life
executed,
Force, yeah.
but they are like, I mean, they're very artistic after views that are shocking, disturbing, and I feel they do a great job of kind of each one having their own style within a killer's motive,
Yes.
and slowly ascending into disturbing qualities. Up until maybe the last one where he gives the woman a choice between suicide or disfigurement, I think we reach our heightened disturbingness with the lust sequence. I think that is one of the most horrifying things I've
from
ever
writers,
seen.
you're building up to something. Wow, a
Yeah.
big pop because we're slowly getting on the
Yeah.
This actually film is kind of quiet.
Okay.
Well, it's seductively quiet because
It's a lot of talking.
It's a lot of talking, but there's a lot of. It starts. It's really weird. It starts.
Yeah.
But it's really.
It's an odd opening few moments, but that pre-credit sequence maybe.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that seems odd, it's that first like 5-7 minutes. Almost maybe could have been excised or swapped. Maybe, but it's an odd kind of an opening to a movie. But once those credits get going, you just never let up.
Right, and I'd say it's very deceivingly quiet because there is music in the background, the train sound effects and everything. So it's almost deceiving. You think it's a quiet film, and I wrote it's a quiet film. Then I realized no, there's a music score being played. There's something in the background. It's not completely quiet all the time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like Morgan Freeman's character's mind all the time. It is kind of quiet for him. He's slowly methodical. It's almost like a Holmes and Hercule Poirot kind of a guy,
Yeah.
where he's usually using his intellect and kind of already knows like the outcome's not good. He already knows the ending. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's more he's staying on at this point because he needs the closure. But he's expecting for that 7th person to be dead before they reach the killer. Like he's expecting to fail. And that's the thing that I love the interactiveness between Mills and Somerset. because Brad Pitt's character he's brand new, fresh on the force. He hasn't been weathered down.
It's my favorite word, contrast.
Yep, exactly. And they're complete polar opposites. And I like that. It's weird to say buddy cop tension, but it is there.
Yeah.
There's buddy cop tension.
Well, it's my first reaction when I saw it as a kid. It's like a horror movie, Lethal Weapon horror movie almost.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Riggs and Murtaugh got in too deep, you might say.
Yeah, but it fits. It's a formula that works.
Yeah.
And it's not a complaint. It's just an observation. Yeah.
But when you said that the movie's quiet, though, there's one action scene I think in the whole movie that you could really consider an action scene. It's when they're chasing the killer and he gets that. Everything else is chess pieces. Even the finale, you could consider that being action, but there's just chess pieces. They're standing talking in a field. Like, there's no action in the film. There's no violence taking place on the screen. Everything is after. And that's what's so crazy. There's no action in this movie, and yet it's action-packed.
Just like the movie Mimic, which comes after it, the city is almost a disease as well.
Yeah, it's very Gotham-esque.
Yes, it's not. We don't really get definitive what the city is, but we understand it's the urbanness of why the hell you're here in the first place. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody, it's almost like Gotham City. What the hell are you doing here?
Because they refer to the city, like, I don't think they ever name it, but they refer to it as, like, this is the worst place to be. Like, this is the worst place to bring your wife, to bring your family. This is not a safe place to be.
People try to leave, right?
And they're constantly, and they constantly bring that up with Brad Pitt's Mills, just saying, like, you shouldn't be here. And it's an entire warning, a building warning for him that, like, you should not have come here.
So it's very fitting because I think you don't get Mimic, you don't get Dark City, you don't get 8mm without this movie.
When I look at other films, Bone Collector is one that I see a lot of in this film with Denzel Washington. But then also
there's there's one actor that's in both this movie. Yeah.
Well, they kind of have like how Liam Neeson's life was changed by Taken. Morgan Freeman's life was changed by this because then he had like Along Came a Spider and Kissed the Girls where he played Alex Cross, and like he kind of had like a big like series of I'm a detective in this movie, and it's like a dark, brooding detective story. He kind of had his own cinematic universe of characters that he played, so it's nice to see. But he added something different to each of these roles as well. Sometimes he was the old grizzled guy. Sometimes he was still somehow younger in other movies that came out during that time.
Of course, I was a kid in the 80s, so when you see R. Lee Emery, I think he was going to have an outburst at vulgarity. I thought he was going to have but he
is this the most restrained he is?
I think so.
I was just realizing I kind of forgot he was in the movie.
Yeah, but it's a nice, I mean, his name is just police captain. Yeah. But he has a weight to him that it makes you feel genuine that this is somebody that Martin Freeman's character has to answer to. Yeah. He has the authority. He sells it very well.
Oh, yeah. And I also thought the same thing with John C. McGinley because he's kind of known for his more outburst kind of style. You know, he plays the cop Californian. He still has moments of it, but I think, again, his best moments are him reacting to, like, the finale from the helicopter, or, like, the moment where, like, that big scene, again, spoiler, he gets up to the guy they think is dead, and he says, you know, like, you deserve this. And then the guy goes, oh, and he comes back, and it's, again, like, he gets these moments where he's reacting to things more. And it's more subdued, and I think that's, again, the style of all these people. Maybe Brad Pitt's is the most, bombastic, because his reactions
because everybody else is so kind of reserved. Yeah. Right? You have to have some kind of a little pop and animated and
but even he probably feels a little reserved in this film, following up, like, 12 Monkeys. You know, because he had done that a couple years prior, where he's very off the wall. And so this is even more
very Brad Pitt. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So I love that the weather is not always right. It's always kind of rainy, even after rain. There's the traffic around you. Really don't have a sense of where you can escape, get away from it. Mm-hmm. The environment is always hounding you. It's claustrophobic a little bit. Even when they have deep shots, it's still almost that trickery of forced perspective where it's there. Yeah. It's very well shot cinematically. I think it's a play with the film. I like how they do almost like a documentary style. The camera follows the flashlight as we're almost a participant. Like the flashlight goes down and we go down and we see little details, which is very 90s. Focus on the little things. So like the piece of paper on the wall. Like what the hell are we doing that? Or
cinematography was done by Darius Kanji, and I don't know if I've ever actually seen any of his other work. I know he did Amour, he did Delicatessen. He did some other works, but like I don't know if I've ever actually seen anything he's done other than this, which shocked me because I was thinking that it was someone more notoriety to me. You know, someone who I could recognize, and I didn't. I was like, well, it's kind of like an odd film. And when you see something like Amour, which was a love story, a romance film, and you see it,
was brightly lit.
This, yeah. So I was surprised by that. One thing I was also surprised by, and that's because this is a composer that we don't give enough credit to in Hollywood, and that's Howard Shore.
Okay.
When we look at a movie
I
like,
didn't. Yeah,
if
I
it was,
didn't look. I'm sorry.
if it was just Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that Howard Shore had done, he'd already would be a fantastic composer who has a legacy that should rival anyone. But we don't give enough credit to the fact that he does subdued, small scores. And I actually had the same thing where I was like, I didn't realize that there was music playing. I listened to the soundtrack later on YouTube, and I was like, wow, this music is really good, and it's really different than a lot of things I would connect Howard Shore with. And it's like, we never give enough credit to Howard Shore. I always talk about John Williams. I talk about James Newton Howard and Michael Giacchino as like the trifecta of like who's working right now. Howard Shore's been turning in great stuff for decades, and we don't talk about it.
So yeah, it's one of those, like, I think because you're so focused on the investigation, the clues, the mysteries, the riddles, and why, that you don't really think about the background, which is the noise, but it's also on top of you. You know, it's that little bug in your ear all the time, the noises. Yeah.
The only time that we talk about the
little
sound
hammer
is
on
when
your
the
balls
characters when the characters refer to it. That's the only time I remember hearing sounds in the movie. Is when they refer to things like, they didn't tell us that this was right next to the train tracks, and then the train comes by and we're like, we register that sound, or we register the cough in that scene because everything is so quiet, and then the guy wakes up. Like, we register all those moments.
Sound editing, which is hard to do. Denominate sound editing because it's where the emphasis are. Yeah, like one of the best sound edited movies is Castaway, but it's so quiet. But you have to make sure everything is matching up right.
It's kind of like the joke about when a Quiet Place was nominated for best sound, and it's like having no sound is a sound. You know, it's kind of like having no color. There's still a color there. It's just no color. This film actually was nominated for 1 Oscar for best film editing, which I completely agree with, because again, every aspect of the movie that works is because it makes you not realize that you're seeing it. You don't think about the cinematography when you're watching it. You don't think about the editing. You don't think about the sound or the music. You're just in.
You think about the climbing that we have to do and the intensity that we know something really awful is going to happen. Because, like we said, we talked about conscientious characters. I don't think there's a conscientious character, but I think Morgan Freeman's what I call a barometer character. Mm-hmm. When he's nervous, okay, we know things are bad. When he's calm,
he's nervous most of the time.
He's nervous most of the time. He's calm. But when there's like he says, not this guy. Mm-hmm. It's not bad. We know it's going to be awful. We know his experience and everything.
Yep. Yeah. But I think like with the film editing is that he does this thing too where it's edited by Richard Francis Bruce, who did Air Force One and The Rock. This is
Air Force One is greatly edited.
Yeah. And this is an editing though where like I've seen this film countless times. I probably watch it at least once every year or two since I saw it. Okay. It pops up on my rotation pretty frequently. My wife loves it too, so it gets put in that way too. This is the first time that I saw that moment with the photographer and connected in my head that that's our John Doe. I knew it going in. Like Kevin Spacey is that character, the photographer at the crime scene. We all know it. It's kind of been talked about as like a did you know this in the movie thing because it happened so well. This is the first time I actually saw it and was like, that is him. Like I heard the voice and stuff. And it's funny
not
that
a double extra guy.
Yeah, I've seen the film so many times and I never think about that. Yeah. It always happens at the end where like I'm looking over trivia and someone's like, oh, he plays the photographer, and I'm like, oh, he is, yeah, I know it, and yet I don't realize it anytime I watch it during that scene. I'm always like, that's kind of an odd scene.
You bring it up at an interesting point, because I remember when I worked at the video store, people would rent it, but they would rent it just to pause, to read the notebooks, to pause, because you can actually read them. That's actually real words, and they're actually a storyline, but it's how compact it is. The notebook's almost a metaphor about the whole story of everything is just compact and on top of you. Yeah. So people, I know people will watch it almost trying to figure out the little intricacy, because the movie likes to focus on little details. And people like to pause and like to read the details.
I've paused during the credits a few times because of all the like taped down news stories and things. I've paused during the opening credits.
I have to see when the first time I saw it in the theater that the Polaroid of what the guy wears for lust was like, what did I just see? Because
they don't show it very, very much. And I'm assuming that might be something to do with earning an R rating over something worse. Because it's almost about like you imagine it immediately. It's when you see the box and when you find out what's in the box, you imagine it immediately to the point where there's so many people that think we see, spoiler alert, Gwyneth Paltrow's head. Yeah, there's so many people, and they did actually make the head, I think, because I think she actually kept it.
I think that's the
but
start
like they don't
of it.
show it. And they do such a great job of making you think that you saw something you didn't see.
Well, somebody told me, like, did you see it? And I was like, I've seen this movie. I remember.
Then
you question yourself, like, did I watch that?
There's that smart editing choice where they give a flash of a photo of her while he's screaming, and that I think is what puts in your head. It's just a photo of her head, but it's not severed or anything. It's just the image is centered on her head, so you think to yourself you've seen it. It's kind of like when people talk about Berenstain Bears. How is it spelled? It's like we remember things differently. Or like
my famous one is the Joker on the dollar bill. People think they saw that in the movie, but he mentions
Which movie?
Batman.
Oh, in the original. Oh yeah,
the Batman, where the Joker's like, in my head on a dollar bill, and then he throws money out. People think that they saw the picture of the Joker on a dollar bill, and it's never. You don't see it. It's just right. It's just the same thing.
Because I remember after I saw this film the first time, and again that was the first time I saw it to the end. In my head, I remembered my sick little twisted head. I remembered seeing him using that tool. Because you imagine again, like your mind goes there. It's
Right.
what you don't see. It's the Jaws effect. Not seeing it is sometimes scarier than seeing it. And that's not always true, but in this case, it's absolutely true because
Right,
your
it's
mind
not a-
connects all those pieces in the most horrifying way.
It's like we put this in the action category at the video store, but you didn't put it in the. I think you probably would be fine putting it in the horror section.
Oh yeah, that's why. I mean, that when we were talking about it, after we said like, should we put this down for Scary Movie Saturday? I was like, well, it's a horror movie. And then watching, it, you're kind of like, it's a thriller, but don't tell me nothing in this movie is horrific.
There's horrific things, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it in our film theory class. There's another point, but there's some things that can be more horrific in a comedy than in a horror movie. Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. There's some horrific things in that movie Frankenstein does. Not in the horror movies. He throws people out of the building and they die.
Yeah.
You don't see that in the original Frankenstein. So we talked about that. Even though that's a comedy, there's some far more horrific things in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And films like that, of course, where you have like your two characters that are the inclusion, but everything around them is treated seriously.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like
How do
that's
you sell
what
it?
get is how do you sell something that is that. With this movie, it's almost like everyone is playing to the serious role, but they're smart enough to know when something will work better unseen than seen. Because you could very easily show the killer killing all these people and doing it really graphically, and it could be shock value and stuff. But it's way more effective to imagine it when you see it happen. Like when you see gluttony at the beginning, my mind goes to like he was forced to eat until that happened. Like that disturbs the hell out of me. You know?
They used to run TV ads for the movie, and it was all the scene of "Help Me." And the TV ad was a 30-second thing, and all it was is just Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, and he goes, "Have you ever seen anything like this?" And where Brad Pitt is almost deflated, like, "This is horrific," and Morgan Freeman just stands stiff, and he's like, "No," and he's like, "7,"
Yeah.
which sells
It's
very
great
well.
reaction, acting.
Yeah, because you know that Morgan Freeman's character has seen a bunch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some
And then
things.
your mind thinks, what the hell could it possibly be that traumatized Morgan Freeman?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an unassuming movie. I mean, even just the title Seven. Like, what is? I mean, is it George Costanza naming his child Seven? Is that like what is the title alluding to? And being able to break it down. That's what I think is so fascinating is rewatching the film over and over again. And we have to give credit where credit's due. I don't like the actor, but man, that John Doe performance by Kevin Spacey is incredible.
Plays a great incel.
Doesn't do much, and I
Son of a
love
bitch.
the fact that he didn't want to be on the credits. He said, "I'll do the role, but I don't want to be in any posters. I don't want to be in any trailers. I don't want to be listed in the credits." He's not in the credits of this movie.
His library
at all.
card said John Doe too.
Yeah.
The other thing we talk about in film theory is the elusive time component. That time is kind of a subjective narrative. It doesn't really have to be definitive, and David Fincher takes it and amplifies it.
Yeah.
Because we talk about that film is actually be in between, like when you're totally awake and totally asleep. It's that in between twilight area of sleepy wakey, and I think David Fincher loves to hit that part where we don't know what year it is, but it fits the movie.
Yeah, that's true. It's lost in time, and even just the progression, because I believe they mentioned like that there's like a week before his retirement is coming, and of course he does ask to stay on at some point, so like, it's a couple more time. Yeah,
He's almost on retirement.
I was 3 days from retirement. I like that there is a
cliches
ticking
can
clock
work.
to it. Oh yeah, and that's the thing is there's a lot of things in this movie you could see as cliche. I mean, he literally is like, "I'm a week from retirement. I'm training the new guy." Like, and then you kind of think to yourself though how they use the cliche. Because we assume the guy that is going to retire is going to probably die at the end, and the young rookie cop is the one who's going to ascend.
transfer,
and
we
do
always
what
say the
happens.
transfer,
And we
yeah.
have a complete twist on that.
Yeah.
The one who suffers the most is not the veteran.
So it's good to watch the movie before we talk about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you've been sitting here for this long and you haven't seen the movie, I am so sorry, but you had your chance. I warned you. But hey, since you probably have seen the movie, what did you think about Seven? Is it your favorite David Fincher film? And if not, which one is?
He didn't have enough blood to write avarice, since he had to write greed.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of letters. You know, it was probably one of the worst.
Avarice. The hell with it. Greed.
How many A's are there? But let us know down in the comments your thoughts on this film. And while you're down there, like and subscribe. It's a free thing you can do that helps to support the show.
If I did like top 20 films of the 90s, this has to be one. It's a marker footnote that everything afterwards.
Yeah, and after we talked about it, like I see it as a horror movie, but I do see it more as a thriller. If I were doing a list of top 10 thrillers,
like the detective
I would put it in there.
aspect.
Yeah,
it's all that blending. Yep.
And hey, you know what, Nick? That's some great coffee, but why don't you throw that coffee out and join the Patreon?
Yes!
It's so cheap.
Yes!
And you as well. If you can sacrifice one coffee every month to support independent creators like ourselves, and you know, if you like the show, you get more of the show for doing so.
Yeah.
That you can help pick the different episodes that we're going to talk about future.
Absolutely.
Consider joining the links down in the description.
Tell us what to do, man.
Exactly. And from all of us here at Kyle and Nick on Film, you can find my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and I like this movie.